myself to go live now on vertical formats. Oh, shoot. You know what? Hold on. Here, let's do that. Now officially live on vertical. So if you happen to be watching there live on vertical, make sure you hit that like button. If you've been watching here on the regular formatted stream, make sure you hit that like button as well. What's going on, Hall of Eru? How you doing? I hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a great Friday the 13th. It's meant to be loud. I'm trying to creep you all out. All right, I'm done with it. All right. All right. So we're gonna get into our main topics today. If you are just tuning in, I went through the last hour of reacting to all the recent movie trailers and other trailers that have come out. So had a fun time with some interesting things there, but now we're getting on to some of the main topics here. And I'll be talking about the latest movies for this week. The first one being Speak No Evil, starring James McAvoy and Mackenzie Davis. Scoot McNairy, who we just saw in the trailer for Night Bitch, which I found to be very interesting there. So that's why it is really interesting to see. It's really interesting to see whatchamacallit, Scoot McNairy show up in two very interesting film properties, I guess, so to speak. But now we're going to be talking about him in Speak No Evil there. What's going on, Caleb Richardson? Accidentally logged into my Rings of Power burner account. You have a Rings of Power burner account? Caleb, what are you doing? What are you up to, my friend? Are you trolling Rings of Power fan videos, or, you know, like, what are you doing? Oh, wait a minute. Caleb, is Hall of Eru you? Is that you, Caleb? I'm dying to know now. I'm curious. I'm dying to know. And I'm dying to know why you have a separate account just for Rings of Power. Before I get into anything, I need to know the story behind this. You like trolling the grifters. Interesting. Okay. Now, grifters of what? The negativity grifters, or those who are constantly being extremely positive for things? And I'm wondering if it's because of that you like coming and watching my streams. I'm curious. All good either way. It's again, I love learning and knowing about the audience. So let me know. I'm very, very curious. Oh, by the way, I noticed something interesting too. The minute I went live on vertical, I'm seeing more interaction than with my horizontal regular stream. I wonder why that is. Are you guys getting the same notifications for both? Or maybe are you getting one notification above the other? I'm very, very curious about that. Let me know. Again, this is just more for a learning experience for me. I want to know how those things happen. The negative grifters. Got it, Caleb. Awesome. Awesome. So I take it that So I haven't watched season 2 at all. You know what? Let me remove this for now before we start talking about Speak No Evil. I don't want to misinform the audience coming in yet. I have not seen any of season 2 yet. I believe episode 5 just dropped this week. I was one of those guys who I thought season 1 was interesting and got better towards the end. But I understand why a lot of people dropped off during the earlier part of the season. It was a little hard to get through. It really was. But I loved how season 1 kind of wrapped up. And it got me curious and somewhat excited for season 2. But I haven't had a chance to see season 2 yet. So what are your thoughts, without spoiling anything, so far of season 2? And if it's something you think I should definitely, you know what? The minute you have a chance, sit down and watch the show, because I think you would like it. Is it one of those kinds of things? Let me know. Let me know what you think. Caleb saying, I enjoyed season 1. Season 2 really benefited from the show, from the slow burn setup of season 1. Okay. So that's good. So that means, so basically all the setup that we got in season 1, because there was a lot of setup in season 1, lots of setup, that it's really starting to pay off more and more in season 2. Season 2 just throws you into the deep end. Oh, interesting. All right. Interesting. What's going on, N187 from New Zealand? Awesome. I've always wanted to visit New Zealand. I never had a chance to. I hope to do so in the future, but thank you for tuning in from there. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great, what's the time difference? Is it evening, early morning for you? I'm not really sure what it is, but I hope you are having a good time. And thank you for checking out the stream. It is interesting too. Like, I get so many interactions and so many new eyes on vertical compared to horizontal. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I've been already streaming now for an hour and a half. Smoking a bowl and listening to Bob Seger. That is the pure definition of living the dream. Congratulations.
Wow.
That's amazing. Good for you. Good on you. That's amazing. Caleb saying there's tons of deep cut lore, and my personal favorite thing about season 2 is Tom Bombadil. I did hear about that. We finally got an introduction to that character, a fan-loved character that people have been dying to see more of for a long time. So I'm pretty sure that that is a major highlight for a lot of people watching Rings of Power now. N187, I am from New York. I am hailing from New York City, Queens to be exact. So if you're a big fan of Coming to America, that is exactly where Hakeem went to find his wife, or queen to be. You're my queen to be. You blew it! Sorry. Yeah, I know. I wasn't ready to sing any tune, but I tried my best. But pleasure seeing all you guys here. I know it's also weird. It's a Friday. A lot of people have finally gone back to school. So afternoon attendance, it's funny, afternoon attendance is not going to be as high as it used to, but hopefully I get to see people from time to time. N187 New York, that's where Home Alone 2 was filmed. Yes, that is correct. Home Alone 2, amongst so many other movies, filmed in New York. So, but yeah, Home Alone 2, that hotel is still there. That is the Four Seasons. That still exists there next to Central Park. Very up class, high scale hotel that costs a lot of money. I wouldn't recommend it because it's, in my opinion, way overpriced to stay in a place like that. Caleb saying also the soundtrack definitely lives up to the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit soundtracks by Howard Shore. That's one thing I noticed from season one too. Season one, and so far Rings of Power feels so much closer to the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings productions than I was expecting it to be. That's why I do find it confusing that we have this show happening now on Amazon. Peter Jackson's coming back to helm, well, not helm, but he's like producing and putting together these new Lord of the Rings movies, anthology movies, for Warner Brothers. So I don't know. It feels weird that we're getting so much Lord of the Rings right now, and I think it's gonna confuse a lot of people moving forward. Awesome beard. Well, thank you so much. Um, I do. It's funny how I get compliments on my beard, especially since I am part Asian. A lot of Asians cannot grow beards, so this is definitely my Spanish side, allowing me to grow such a thing. But I appreciate the compliment. Thank you. Yeah, I know a lot of people can't grow beards. It's tough. Yeah, I'm definitely one of the lucky ones. Do I have a top 10 movies of all time? I think if I were to go into that now, I would be here talking about that instead of the main topics for the next 2 hours. Um, I can tell you right now, if you are familiar with Letterboxd, they always ask what your top four is. So right now, I will say my top four as of right now, and this could change anytime because I just have so many loves and passion for movies. Currently, my top four is Lost in Translation, the 1994 Crow movie, Clue, the comedy from the 80s, and Empire Strikes Back. You could add in there the original Back to the Future, which is kind of like a perfect movie in itself. I love the original Godfather. I might love Godfather 2 more than the first one. Um, Seven is a fantastic movie. I love Twister. The original Twister, I think, is like the perfect disaster movie. It has everything for everybody. There's just so many. I can just go, back and forth and all that. But for shits and giggles, why don't you like put into the chat some of your favorite movies so I could see what you're into. Caleb saying I did hear that season two put a lot more care into is that connectivity? Amazon did pick up the TV rights to the Similarian between seasons, so there's a lot more they can pull from that now. Simon Token also joined as a consultant for season two, and they've got that going for them. Well, that's good to know. Hopefully, it's something that can turn itself around for people who were turned off by season one. So I'm hoping that at least things can turn around for viewership, because if they can't improve on viewership for this season, I don't know. They spent so much money on the series and the properties and the IP that it may be a tremendous bust for Amazon, but hopefully that won't be the case moving forward. Excuse me, guys. Sorry. That's what happens when you talk a lot and you drink a lot of coffee. All right, let's get into my review on the latest movie, Speak No Evil, starring the great James McAvoy. I'm so excited and dying to talk about this movie. But before I do, awesome picks. Thank you, N187. My top five, Independence Day. Oh, you know what? I need to take this down because I have a funny story to share with you if you haven't heard it yet. The Matrix, Dazed and Confused, Trading Places, and Drive. I just saw Drive for the first time last year. Fantastic movie. Fantastic movie. I can understand why the character that Ryan Gosling played is very iconic for a lot of people. So great movie. I think it's an underrated movie too. I think more people should watch that movie. Trading Places is such a classic from the 80s. I love Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd in that. Dazed and Confused, another classic from back then. The Matrix, you can't beat the sci-fi elements that we were treated to for the very first time when that movie came out. Independence Day. All right. So I saw Independence Day in the theater. This came out, I want to say 1995, 96, maybe, right? I went to the opening night with a bunch of high school friends of mine. This was a year after I already graduated from high school, but I still kept a lot of friendships from people that were still in high school from the previous year. And imagine 3 rows of high school kids, all of us, watching Independence Day for the first time. And we were loving it. We were eating it up. It's the perfect summer blockbuster type of movie, right? Towards the climactic ending, right? You know, the whole thing of here he comes, the bumbling drunk guy about to save the day, flying his airplane directly into the ship. Like, hey guys, remember me? I'm back. Right when that was just about to happen, movie stopped. Projector turned off and all the lights went up in the room. And we were like, what is happening right now? None of us knew what was happening until we saw ambulances outside and people coming in. Apparently, someone in the last row was having a seizure. I think all the excitement and all the lights and everything just heightened things up, and some guy broke out into a seizure. So they had to stop the movie, get the ambulance, stretcher this guy out, and we were just stuck sitting there for like a good 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes, and after we all learned what was happening, we had the option to leave, but we're like, we got to see the end of the movie. We got to see what happens. So they eventually finally turned the movie back on, but it lost all of its excitement because, you know, when you're building up to something big like that and to all of a sudden just break in the middle of it, and now to pick things up as he's about to crash into the ship, and then everything kind of like creates a domino effect. We're like, oh, okay. Oh, that's great. But we weren't as pumped up and excited as we were before. So that was very unfortunate. But I still enjoyed the movie, but it's that lasting memory I'll always have watching that movie in the theater when that happened. So it's definitely an interesting story. So anytime I hear Independence Day, I always remember that story. So yeah. But great movie. Caleb says Amazon originally only had the rights to the appendices of the Lord of the Rings books, which did not go into too much detail about the Lord of the Rings or the Rings of Power, so they had to improvise a bit. Well, that could explain. I guess that's one of the troubles, like especially like Game of Thrones, that they're experiencing right now, when they're creating content off of books that currently don't exist. And I know George R.R. Martin is like complaining about his disappointment with House of the Dragon right now and how, you know, the ending of Game of Thrones happened. But at the same time, dude, we're waiting for your books, man. I've never read them, but I could only imagine if I was a huge fan of these stories and it's taking years and years and years for the next versions to come out. Instead of complaining on Twitter and all that, why don't you freaking sit down and write the damn book? I get it. Writer's block is a major thing. I suffer from it all the time. But you gotta freaking just sit down and do something, dude. Like you're keeping your fan base chomping at the bit in anticipation for your stories to come out, and you're not doing much for anything. So it's very disappointing. Gorilla Fantasy. Oh, what's up, Gorilla Fantasy? I just talked about you the other day when I was doing my 10,000 subscriber celebration stream. I said, like, you were definitely one of the ones that were a big part of it as being a supporter and all that. So hope you're doing well. It's been a while since I've seen you. My favorite movie in 1995 might not be my favorite from 1995 because I'm a different person now. That happens. That happens. Movies that I used to like back in the day, when I watch it now, I'm just like, doesn't really ring as well to me as it used to. So yeah, I that happens to all of us. So, but what movie is that? Is the Last of Us TV series worth watching? Definitely, definitely. I let me reel it back a little bit. Did you play the game? If you played the video game and you like the video game, then you may appreciate what they did with the series here. Some people were complaining a little bit with some of the small changes they made, but they also elaborated on certain things, and it was the elaboration that I think really, really helped with the series as a whole. If you've never played the game, then I still think it's worth checking out because the story in itself is fantastic. And Pedro Pascal is great in the role. A lot of people give a lot of crap to the young actress who was in Game of Thrones. I forget her name right now. But she does a really great job as Ellie. She may not be the Ellie you envision, but give her a chance because her acting is fantastic. Girl of Fantasy, no worries, man. Of course. Caleb, biggest change of Rings of Power is the Stranger, if he is in fact Gandalf. Like, that was the big mystery from season 1, wasn't it? N187, yes, you love the game. Then I say check it out. Give it a chance, check it out. Again, there's this one performance and one episode that broke me. Like, I was crying throughout it. It literally emotionally broke me. That's how well the series was for me. So I'm definitely much. Now, I never played the second game. And I was debating whether or not I should play the game now and then watch season 2, or hold off, watch season 2, and then play the game afterwards. So we'll see. We'll see. All right, N187, take care. Thank you again for timing in. Love the conversation. Hope to see you again in some other time. Caleb saying, in the Silmarillion, Gandalf doesn't come to Middle-earth until after Sauron is defeated the first time. That's why in the movies, Gandalf doesn't appear in the great battle with giant Sauron. Yeah, so that's why I could understand why there would be a lot of conflict on whether or not the stranger is Gandalf. I guess I don't have such strong ties to this franchise. I love the stories and I love what we've gotten, but I'm not going to argue either way if it is. So it doesn't really affect me one way or the other, but we'll see what happens. We'll see. Also, if you're tuning in, watching the live stream, don't forget, hit that like button. Would greatly, greatly appreciate it. And thank you again for all your support. All right, let's talk about this movie. Again, I love catching up with all of you guys. I love the conversation. Keep it going. But let's talk about this. So, Speak No Evil. I saw the original movie in 2022 when I was able to watch, or I guess you could kind of say I attended Sundance. So in 2022, Sundance was still doing virtual, or they didn't do anything in 2021. But in 2022, they came back and they did their festival virtually. So I've never had a chance to visit Sundance and attend the festival in person because it's in Colorado. It's Colorado or Utah. I forget, one of those states. But given the chance to attend it virtually, I thought, oh, I need to freaking, do this for the first time, especially since I just started my channel. I want to focus on talking about movies and all that, and this will be a great opportunity for me. And Speak No Evil was on the lineup in 2022 at Sundance, and it's a Dutch film. And it was definitely one of those movies that was very bleak and depressing, very foreign. So if you're not familiar with kind of like these Nordic storylines, I like to compare it to the A24 movie Lamb, where it's just kind of awkward and weird, and you can kind of tell like there's some weird messaging going on here. Maybe it's talking about social machinations. It really highlights the awkwardness of social interactions in the Nordic countries, especially when you're forced to socialize with a lot of people. So it's interesting how it plays on that, and the play on trust and who to believe and how you're supposed to believe in things. The way the movie ended too is very dark and very bleak. And it kind of left like a weird feeling in my stomach after I saw the movie. I was like, oh my God, this is so depressing and so dark. I felt extremely disturbed and it was very creepy all throughout. So when I heard that they were going to do an American remake of it, I was like, oh boy, here we go. America's going to ruin a movie once again. But you got James McAvoy in it. And if you loved James McAvoy's performance in any movie that he's done, especially in a movie like Split, where he was able to transform into all of these different personalities, then you're going to love his performance here because James McAvoy gives one of the best performances I've seen this year so far. He is like charming, but also very creepy and disturbing. And you see his transformation from when you are first introduced to him in the beginning of the film, which he's kind of like like in a way a very outspoken, eccentric type of personality who you could tell he lives by his own rules, and that's kind of like how the family is. And his transformation towards the end of the movie, where he just looks like a monster. He's like this psychotic beast of a monster. And I mentioned earlier in the stream, like when I saw this one particular moment at the end of the movie, as he's walking towards what's about to happen, he looks totally different than when we first saw him in the beginning of the movie. And I remember I yelled out and I pointed to the screen. I'm like, look at that beast. McAvoy's a beast. And he really is a beast. And he is excellent in this movie. And they made subtle changes in the Americanized version of this film where you kind of it's kind of more, I would describe it as the victim family is a very uptight, typical American family that they are very passive with things. And I guess it's more of like an East Coast mentality. They don't speak up a lot and they have problems intercommunicating with their feelings and all this kind of stuff, like things kind of similar to how the original film was. But they also put a lot of emphasis on the kids. I feel like the kids drive a lot of what's happening in this film. The big reveal that happens in the movie is discovered by the children, right? They're the ones that are kind of like, letting the adults know what's really happening here, and that's what kind of like changes and gets things ramped up and going in the third act. The first two acts are very similar to the original movie, but the ending is different, completely different. And I could see that they definitely changed things for a more American audience. The tone of the movie feels definitely more thrilling. I found myself getting very anxious and wondering what's really happening as we were getting closer to that third act. And then when things blew up and the doors busted open, it really busted open. And I was just like, oh my God, what are they doing now? Because it almost felt like two different movies where you had like a weird kind of psychological thing happening with the two families towards the first two halves of the movie. And then it turns into like this chamber movie, almost reverse home invasion kind of thing like that. And you're not sure what's going to happen. Are they going to get out? Are they going to escape? Are they all going to, meet their doom? And it ends on a kind of satisfying, hopeful note where the good guys win at the end of it. Very different from the original movie. I'm not going to explain too much yet as to what happens or what the main differences are, but I found myself enjoying this movie more. And as I was talking to Scorched earlier in the stream about it, it's a more digestible movie for a more American audience. Because if they kept the same ending as the original Dutch movie, I think it would throw a lot of people off. And I think a lot of people would be extremely disturbed by the movie in general. Here, it's almost not typical, but it is one of those endings that we would expect from a movie like this. But it was satisfying. And it was very hopeful. And in a way, you're kind of like, yes, they did it, kind of thing like that, right? And yeah, and at the end of the day, I actually enjoyed this version more so than I enjoyed the original 2022 Speak No Evil. Not to take away from that movie though, because there was some things in that movie that I did like and I did appreciate, especially when it dives more into the creepiness aspect of it all. But I would give that movie, and I at this time I wasn't on Letterboxd when I was watching this movie back then, but I would give this movie a 3 out of 5 stars. The 2022 Speak No Evil, Speak No Evil 2024, I give it 4 out of 5. Major point of that is James McAvoy. Again, his performance is brilliant. Everyone else was pretty good too. I mean, Mackenzie Davis, who I'm not so familiar with, did really well. The Scoot McNairy plays this kind of lost man who's maybe his manhood is being taken away from him, and James McAvoy actually helps him in kind of realizing that he needs some of that manhood back in his life. Interesting storyline again between the families there. I'll talk about it in a little bit. So you had this guy who's really trying to find himself in being kind of like this leader of his family, because the wife seems to be the one wearing the pants. So he's trying to deal with that and trying to be like the more vocal person and the guy who actually does actions to help protect his family. So it's interesting to see that dynamic happening through this movie and all that, because in a way you could kind of see how the husband and wife, the victim husband and wife, kind of be envious of McAvoy and his wife, in this situation, because they have it all figured out. They live in this great place in Europe. They have, a great relationship. They are still very sexually active. They seem to have a decent son who has a problem, but they seem to be gelling as a family for the most part. They have answers to everything. No, nothing's too small or too big for them, all those things. But there's a weird streak in there. There's a weird demonic streak in there that pops up from time to time, and it kind of reminds them, wait a minute, maybe things aren't so great on that side of things. So it's definitely a lot of those things that you get to explore in a movie like this. So yeah, Speak No Evil, I think out of the 3 movies that I watched this week, this was my favorite of the 3. And I think going into this weekend, yes, Beetlejuice is going to still be number 1 at the box office. I won't be surprised if this comes in second, because I think a word of mouth is going to spread, and I think a lot of people are going to realize that this is a fun movie, especially today is Friday the 13th. And I think, for something like that, I think a lot of people would be wanting to watch a movie like this, and it could be a fun time for people at the theater this weekend seeing a movie like this. So yeah. So with that being said, allow me, if you will, to talk some spoilers. Now, I'll definitely talk some spoilers today with some of the movies I'm seeing. And I definitely want to talk about the differences between the OG and the current movie. And like I said, there's a lot of differences that they did mainly towards the end of the movie. And one of the main differences that I noticed in this movie alone is I found myself really caring more for these characters than I did in the original film. In the original film, like I mentioned, it was very dark and bleak and, not lifeless, but hopeless. Like, here is a family that just seems to be down on their luck. Things aren't working well. They're hoping to kind of rekindle themselves, maybe through the purview of this new family that they have a friendship with, and then all things went to hell afterwards, right? And they found themselves entrusting in the wrong people. And the great line in the original movie that's still so creepy is, as the victim family is seeing all of these bad things happening to them, they say, like, why are you doing all these things? And the last things you hear in the original movie was the man saying to them, it's because you allowed it to happen. You're like, oh my God, that is so dark, so bleak, right? And he says the same thing here in this movie too. But it's during a time of there's still hope. There's still a chance of things to happen. But you have the families here. So obviously the victim family is the main focus here. You have a girl who's suffering from some sort of separation anxiety, dealing with society and all that. She has this nervous tick that she really relies on an emotional stuffed animal, which is a rabbit. If she doesn't have this rabbit, she loses her mind. She starts scratching herself. There's so much dependency on this thing. So that's one problem that this family has. Second problem that we learned to find out is that the marriage is now going so well. The wife moved with the husband to Europe because the husband had an opportunity that fell through. So the wife had to give up her life and move to Europe that she didn't want to, and she's finding herself not really coping so well with the situation, and may have been entertaining a possibility of cheating. And apparently she was exchanging text messages with somebody. She got herself a dick pic and all that, and the husband found out, and there was a little thing between the two of them about that. So the man is feeling very manless, I guess, in a way, because wife was entertaining the possibility of cheating on him. The wife is the one that is currently working and making all the money. He can't seem to land a job, and everything he seems to get close to falls apart, and he feels very helpless, right? They go on vacation, they meet this family that seems to have it all together, they really get along and all that, and they use this as an excuse. It's like, maybe this will help turn things around for us. Maybe we need this. Maybe we need a time away with people we hardly even know that seem to be nice folks and all that. You know, they have a son that maybe our daughter can help break out of her shell and all those things. And it's all of those things happening right now, right? And because of learning and understanding all of those little intricacies within the family, which we also got glimpses of in the original movie too, it made me feel like I invested more time in this family than I did in the original. So that's something that I thought this movie was able to explore more of, especially with the way they handled the awkward situations, you know, the situations that, you know, they couldn't speak up on, the very passive, aggressive way of handling things. And I've seen so many people act that way in the past around me. So it's really, really interesting to see a lot of that stuff. You know, so that's one thing that I really appreciated about this new version of this movie, which I think a lot more people are going to appreciate this movie more than the original. Gorilla Fantasy, you got to run. All right, I'll catch you next time as well. I hope you have a wonderful weekend if I don't see you. Thank you for the congratulations. I really appreciate it. So have a good one, my man. So yeah, so those were, at least in the earlier parts of the movie, those were the things that I found very interesting, that I felt different from the original. Let's talk about this ending, because the ending is completely different from the original movie, and you'll understand why I think this new ending is very different overall. In the original movie, the one who comes across the big reveal was the husband, the guy who, you know, the weak-mannered husband that is still trying to find himself and all that. He comes across the room where it is revealed that this family that they are staying with are psychopaths, and apparently they have been kidnapping families that they come across and they meet, and they're stealing their kids because for whatever reason they can't have their own kids, right? And if it doesn't work out with that kid, they end up, you know, replacing it with another kid, and they get rid of all these people, right? So they have a room filled with like all the luggage and all the personal effects and all those things like that, you know. So it's the man who comes across his discovery, and as they're trying to escape, nothing goes right for them. Nothing goes right. You know, the son that they had ends up dying. They kill him. The daughter, their own daughter, gets captured. They cut out her tongue. They're hopeless. They are asked to go into this field, stripped down naked, and they get stoned to death. And the movie ends with them dead. The bad people win. Now has the daughter, their own daughter, and they get to live on the rest of their lives, tormenting future families to come. So it's a very bleak story. Very, like it left like a weird feeling in my stomach when I saw it the first time. And I was like, man, I'm in a bad mood now. I think I need to watch a cartoon or something. very, very, but it's a very European, very Dutch type of filmmaking, I think, in a way, where in those type of movies, that's like a very interesting way to end things, right? And the way they handle the relationships between the families and all that. In this movie, again with the great James McAvoy, the kids are the ones that lead most of the way to the revelations and all that. The boy is a little bit more active, and he's throughout this whole movie, he's hinting to the girl that there's something amiss here. He's trying to show them a watch and the insignia on the back of the watch. And he's like, along the way, you learn at the end of this movie, this is not these people. This is not these people. And he's trying to kind of teach them and point them in the right direction and all those things like that. And then the big reveal, again, same room or same type of room with all the effects of everyone. It's the boy that leads the daughter to that room. And they come to the revelation of, oh my God, this family is psychotic. This is not even his parents. His parents are no longer around because they got rid of him and all these things like that. So it's the daughter that's trying to communicate that to her parents. Her parents find out what's going on, and now they're trying to plot a way to escape from these guys. And along the way, you can tell McAvoy and the wife, they're onto them. They're like, okay, these guys, I think they know what's happening here. I think they're catching on, and we need to act now. And what's funny too is like they have another friend who owned like kind of like a restaurant, like an off the beaten path restaurant, like a kind of like chef's table type of situation, who's in on the game with them. So they invite this guy to come over. So now it's not only McAvoy and the wife trying to get rid of these people, but also their friends. So you have three people going against three like crazy psychotic people trying to going against this family. And this is where it becomes a reverse home invasion thing, where they lock themselves in their home. All of these guys that are trying to kill them are outside, and they're trying to get in there to get rid of them. And I don't know if they want to keep the boy or if they want to keep the daughter. But the way it all started too is as they were about to leave, when things looked like they were able to get away, they just throw the boy in the damn lake. They're about to drown him, and all that. And then of course the dad couldn't go on to live the boy drowning, so he goes out, saves the drowning boy, and that's when they capture the family. And then this is where it becomes like a big thing, and it looks like they were about to win, but then because of some cleverness, the wife had like a box cutter in her pants, was able to slash McAvoy in the face. The daughter had like this like syringe that she held on that's going to come into play later on. They were able to fight their way out of things, right? And that's basically what happens towards the end of this movie. It becomes a big battle of, can we outlast these people, make our way out of the house, and run for the hills, right? And that's basically what's happening here. And slowly they do, right? But like I said, McAvoy turns into and transitions into this very beastly, psychotic monster where he looks so transformed and different from when we first met him to like literally a hulking, massive beast. And I said it before, McAvoy is great at playing characters that change, that he can change in a heartbeat and all that. And this dude was just, he must have like pumped weights like the morning of the filming for these scenes, because he was jacked up, man. And he's like breathing heavily and he's going nuts. He's like really out to get these guys, because as they're fighting their way out, they're taking each person out one at a time. The friend catches it, the wife eventually catches it, and as they're about to leave, McAvoy comes and sees his wife dead on the ground. It's like, oh, she's my lifeline. Now your daughter is going to replace her and blah, blah, blah. But they're able to finally beat him. The boy fights back because the boy's so angry. Now, remember, in the original movie, the boy dies. They drown that kid. You're like, oh, he's expendable. We'll just get rid of this because we have this new girl now. But the boy fights back, man. As McAvoy is like, the syringe came into play. The daughter, as the gun was held to her head, she had the syringe, got the syringe in the leg of McAvoy. He's now like, losing it. He's like, loses all motor functions and all those things like that. As he's writhing around in the ground, the dad was about to shoot him in the face with a shotgun, but didn't do it, let it go, and he's trying to, McAvoy's like egging him on. He's like, come on, be a man. You lost your manhood, all that. Do this. This will kind of like finish your transformation in a way, right? But he doesn't do it. Here comes the boy. He's like, you know what? F that. I'm going to do it. Takes a giant rock that just starts bashing McAvoy over the head multiple times, just going nuts. And he can't speak because he has no tongue. He's like, "Marr! Marr!" And it was just bananas. And the family's watching in horror, like, oh my God. And this boy wouldn't stop. And you could see like this like dummy McAvoy head just getting the meat beaten out of it. And that's it. And they were able to hop into their car, drive away. And you see the boy crying, just traumatized by the whole experience. The daughter, who always relies on this damn bunny, is giving the bunny to him because I think she realizes, I think he needs it more than I do now. So in a way, she kind of got over her thing because of the trauma of all these things. Maybe now the marriage is saved because of this shared traumatic experience. But it ends on a hopeful note. They escaped. The boy was saved. And then hopefully they can go to the authorities and say, like, oh my God, the psychotic family in the middle of the woods in Europe, they've been capturing families and doing all these crazy things and blah, blah, blah. So it ends very hopeful. I think it's going to gel much better with American audiences in the original movie. But I will say this. If you watch Speak No Evil this weekend, I do still highly recommend you check out the original film. Because you get to see where a lot of the inspiration comes from. You get to see what they borrowed from that, or what they transitioned from that, and what they didn't. And it's going to give you a different perspective on how storytelling can be very different based off of what, as a director and as a filmmaker, what you decide to put focus on, right? And the way they kind of trail it based off of the culture of where the movie is going to be shown. Because again, the original Speak No Evil probably would speak better for like a more Nordic culture, a more European culture. And then you have this that most Americans, or those who are very much familiar with Americans, can easily digest and relate to. So yeah, so it's a different dynamic altogether, but I love this movie, this new version. Again, if it wasn't for McAvoy's performance, I think it would be also a 3 out of 5, just like the original. But McAvoy pushed it way over the top for me. So I really highly recommend this movie. If there's one new movie you want to go to the theaters to watch this weekend, then I highly recommend Speak No Evil. So yeah. So that is my review and thoughts on Speak No Evil. I'm curious if this is a movie you're all planning to watch. If this is something you're interested in, definitely let me know in the comments. I would love to hear all your thoughts and all of those things. All right. Next up, another, again, because of the day. It is indeed Friday the 13th. So we need to talk about spooky things. So my next review, I'm going to be talking about the latest from A24, and that is The Front Room. What's going on, Mariana? Hello back. Oh my gosh. I'm getting haunted. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for saying hi. How are you? I hope you're having a good day, morning, or evening, depending on where you're from. So yeah, so let's talk about The Front Room. So again, I'm a lover of A24. You all should know that by now. And anytime a new A24 movie comes out, I'm extremely excited for it. So when this movie came out and I saw the trailers for it, I was like, oh, this definitely looks like one of those like weird, kind of disturbing A24 movies that I really thought was going to be a movie that dives deep into religion and how those who are obsessed with religion can really like affect other people. And I feel like it was definitely going to be like a thriller horror movie in that essence. When seeing this movie now, yes, it does play into it, but it's very different than I was expecting. Mariana Wilson, what kind of geek are you, based or woke? Um, that's a very interesting question. So first of all, let me say this. When it comes to being a geek, I love movies. I have a passion for movies. I love pop culture. I have a passion for pop culture and all those things. I love TV, video games, you name it. I love talking about those things. Now, this whole woke based thing, I try not to pay any attention to any of those like categories or those monikers or any of those things. I'm just very honest and truthful in what I think about things. I call things out when I don't agree with them, and I call things out when I think people are going a little bit too nuts about something. So I'm very equal opportunity, right? And that's how I will say. That's the kind of geek that I would describe myself as. You know, like I don't believe in one particular agenda over another. You know, if something is way too, in a way, pushing a certain message, I'll be the first to call it out and say maybe that's not necessary. And then, you know, if there's not a lot this way, then I'll say, well, you know what? I think more attention should be paid for this or paid on that, you know, so. Mariana Silva says, let me put it this way. Did you like Acolyte, Rings of Power, and She-Hulk? All right. Acolyte, I liked it for the most part. There were some issues with it because of the writing. I didn't like I'll be honest, I didn't like the way Disney treated it. I thought they should have stuck to their guns and they should have renewed it. And if they're not happy with how the story panned out in the first season, get another showrunner in there, get another writer, because there's still a lot you can do with those characters that I really was interested in seeing what they could do. Plus, you introduce a freaking major Star Wars character that now no one's going to know if we're going to see again. So if I were to rate the Acolyte out of 5 stars, I would have given it 3. Rings of Power, I enjoyed the first season, even though it was very slow to get into, but I liked how it ended. I have not had a chance to watch season 2 yet, so I'm a little behind there. She-Hulk started strong for me and then just got too silly at the end of it. The humor was okay, but it kind of lost me towards the end there. And I don't care about who plays what or who's featured in it and all that. But I did think the whole the twerking situation was really silly, just because it was silly, just because it didn't gel with me, you know. But there are parts of the show that I liked, but overall, it wasn't the type of show that I was hoping it was going to be. I thought a lot of the fourth wall breaking was fun, but then there were some things that didn't work as well. So I'm hoping we could see more of that character if it's another season or if she just pops in and out of other things in the future. But that's my opinion on that. So I hope that answers your question, Mariana. I don't know if it does, but I'm curious what your thoughts are as well about any of those things. All right, so the front room. So again, another thing that really stood out to me, and this is something, again, I didn't realize until the movie ended and I was watching the credits, which I always do. The writer and director is Max Eggers and Sam Eggers, who are brothers, but they're also brothers of Robert Eggers. So I had no idea that the Eggers brother were 3 Trace Eggers, and they're all in the film business, and they're all directing and writing film. I love Robert Eggers. Robert Eggers is one of my favorites. I can't wait. I can't stop talking about Nosferatu and how that's going to be an upcoming movie that I can't wait for. But I've been a fan of his other stuff in the past, like The Witch and things like that. Great movies. So Max and Sam, I'm not familiar with, and knowing that this is their first movie together, I was like, oh, that's fascinating, you know. And overall, you know, I'm glad I had a chance to check it out. You know, but it definitely is a different movie than I was expecting. Mariana, it doesn't bother you when they don't respect the canon for those universes? I'm not even talking about gender or race swap. It depends. Lord of the Rings, I don't have such deep ties or connections to the lore and canon of those shows, or of the books. I read The Hobbit, loved it. The movies came out, didn't like it so much. Never read Lord of the Rings, loved the Peter Jackson movies. I tried reading the Lord of the Rings books afterwards. I couldn't get through it because I thought the writing was kind of difficult for me to get through. That's just me, personally. Acolyte, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Love Star Wars. You know, but I don't mind if they kind of do things differently as far as storytelling is concerned. I know they were trying to pay a lot of attention to the High Republic stuff, you know, so I was really looking to see, okay, how are they going to explain some of these things? The whole Coven of Witches was okay. Maybe not the way I would have approached things, but I was like, okay, that's interesting. They're going to do that. All right. Kind of like treat the Force as like a religion that many people have different takes on. So I was like, okay, I'm on board for the most part, you know, but I'm not going to be like standing up on a soapbox saying, this is not my Star Wars. George Lucas wouldn't have done it this way. Nah, let's face it. George Lucas knew one part of Star Wars. Everything else, he was kind of making it up as he went along. He didn't have a manifesto that had everything detailed and all those things like that. He didn't. I'm sorry. You watch enough of his interviews, you watch a lot of behind the scenes stuff. He was making it on the fly for the most part. You know, it is what it is. So I'm not going to be one of those guys. I'm going to be open enough to see what they're trying to do as long as they tell an interesting story. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You know, it is what it is. So, and She-Hulk, I never read the comics. I knew of her, but this was way after my time of reading the comic books. I remember the original She-Hulk, which is definitely not the She-Hulk we got now. So I don't have such tenured interest in that way that I'm going to be up on the mountaintop somewhere screaming hatred for something like they ruined my thing. I will call things out if I don't agree with it, or I think the writing is terrible, or I think the show as a whole or movie as a whole sucked. I'll give my 2 cents on those things. But I'm not going to be making videos on YouTube that are going to be lambasting and focus on all the negativity and calling out the head of Kathleen Kennedy and all that. You know, do I agree that maybe she should step back from the creative side of Star Wars? Maybe a little bit. You know, she's a great business person. She's a great producer. She gets things done and she gets people together. She's been doing this in the business way before all of this stuff. You know, if you look back at a lot of the 80s movies that we all loved watching, her name is there as producer. You know, so she knows what she's doing, but maybe creative side, leave it to somebody else. You know, but these companies, they all have their own different problems. Disney has a lot of problems. They don't know what they're doing with Star Wars. You know, Marvel, they're trying to take steps back and redo everything. You know, and I think Bob Iger is telling them, you need to fix this, you need to fix that, or else we're going to have a problem. All of these studios are trying to figure things out. You know, some are doing it better than others. So, and I'll be the first to say and criticize what I think is wrong with a lot of these things. But at the end of the day, I still enjoy what I do. I still enjoy what I see. I still enjoy what I watch. And I encourage conversation about that. If you like something, let's talk about it. If you don't like something, let's talk about that too. And let's have healthy conversations about it. But I'm not going to be up here on YouTube saying, if you don't think this way, then you're wrong. You have an opinion? Great. It's not the right one. That's not me. You're not going to get that here. All right. So yeah. So again, going back to the front room. I hope I could talk about this movie. Again, I love the conversation, but I want to try to stick to topic here. So the front room, going into it, I thought it was going to be a very heavily focused religious type of horror thriller movie. And like I said, it wasn't. I like to dub this movie as the nightmare, the in-law from hell situation. And it is a movie that featured a lot more feces and urine than I was really expecting. It was definitely not a movie I was expecting going into it. Brandy was good. I thought Brandy is Brandy. You know, like I haven't seen her acting chops in a very long time. But for the most part, she did a decent job. Really, all props goes to Catherine Hunter, who plays Solange in this. And if you don't know who she is, she was in Andor season 1. She played that very overly protective mother, always feeding cereal to her son and telling her what to do and trying to connect him with all the higher ups at the Empire and all that. But she is by far the best thing about this movie. She is so absurdly over the top with a lot of the things that she's done here. And it really is just a movie of her driving this family nuts. And there are, it was interesting too, because I was in the theater yesterday watching this, and I was the only one because this movie's already been out for over a week. And I guess it wasn't that appealing to a lot of people. But I was laughing my ass off during many parts of this film. I mean, the torture that was brought upon Brandy as she's pregnant, trying to prepare for the coming in and welcoming of her new baby into the world. And she has to worry about this damn annoying, extremely old and very incontinent mother-in-law who is also extremely religious and racist. She comes across a certificate that she was part of the Sisters of the Confederacy. You know, she believes in all of these, like she belongs to this prayer group where they do like incantations and blah, 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 blah. You've seen the videos of them. You see them all in church, holding their hands up, talking in tongue and blah, 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 probably worshiping with like snakes and everything. She's that type of person. And she's just tormenting Brandy's character throughout the whole time, and also secretly trying to get in good graces with her son-in-law, you know, kind of like nurture him and show her that she's the true mom of the house, you know, and really imposing her way into their lives. And Brandy's just having to have to deal with all this and fight back eventually towards the end. And it was just an amazing roller coaster ride, really. A lot of it was very silly. I can see why probably a lot of people won't appreciate this movie, but I found it entertaining for the most part. Like I said, the performances were decent. The best is definitely Catherine Hunter as the in-law. And the ending, even though it was somewhat predictable, it was a nice twist. And I'll get to that in a little bit when I talk spoilers. But overall, I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. It definitely fits within the A24 realm of universe of movies. Max and Sam definitely hones in on their absurd love of psychological horror and thriller, very much like their other brother, Robert. I would love to see a movie. Now, apparently they've been helping Robert do a lot of his films too. So, but it would be nice to see like a triplet of a movie that is directed and written by these three guys and them working on the same film together, because they definitely have similarities. So I'm very curious as to what Max and Sam are going to do in the future. But yeah, like I said, 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was entertaining. There are parts of it that was slow and kind of dragged, and other parts that I didn't gel so well with. But overall, I was thoroughly entertained, and I think some people would appreciate a movie like this. But let me get into spoilers, because I need to talk about some of the things that happen in this movie, if you would allow me to do so. So, the major twist here that happened in this movie is that, yes, religion plays an important part, but there wasn't this supernatural religious element. Maybe there was a little bit when it comes to the birth of the baby, because one of the interesting things is that, again, you have a mother-in-law that is supreme religious and wants everything done the right way. You know, when they first found out as to what they were naming their baby, she's like, oh no, let's not do that. And she starts doing this like incantation and like talking in tongues, holding the stomach. And then she was able to somehow hone in on the spirit of their death baby that they had before. Because we come to find out that this family once had a son that passed away. I think it died of, what do you call that? Infant death syndrome. I think that's what happened there. So this is their second chance of having a child, right? And she's like, oh, she's like honing in on the spirit of this other baby. And it's like, oh, the name should be like this. And then they find out that the name is like Laurie or Lawrence or something. And so they decide to change the name to Laurie, right? And it's like, oh, it kind of grew on me and all that. And because of that, you see the mom, trying to like weasel her way into the family, and she wants to take care of the family, but she also wants to set her foot down and say like, I am the mom of this household, and that is my goal here. So what does she do? She uses her abundance of fortune, and she pays the whole mortgage of the house. She brings in and buys all this new furniture. She's staking her claim in everything. She has her church group come in, they do prayer sessions, and she's really driving Brandy nuts throughout this whole movie. But at the same time, whenever Brandy tries to call her out on her stuff, she plays the old card. And she's like, oh, help me. Oh, I just shat on the bed. Oh, I can't keep my pee in. And all this, like, oh, help me, bathe me. And then the minute she gets babied, especially from the son, she just looks at Brandy with a big smile on her face. And she's like, I got my way. I got my way. So it's a lot of the cat and mouse back and forth kind of thing, which is like really hilarious and all. And it gets to the point where she almost gets the son on her side, to the point where the son is accusing Brandy of hurting their own child. But she's like, no, I would never do that. It's your mom. And what I did appreciate is that it didn't go full on 100% that route. It didn't go on the route where in most cases you would expect that son sides with the mom 1000%, and now it's Brandy versus the world, right? It didn't really happen that way, which is a good thing. And you really got to the point where, all right, they realize the mom is nuts, but at the same time they kind of have to respect her because she did help pay for the mortgage and all this, and plus she is still a stepmom, right? But then out of nowhere, the mom dies at the end. And that's like a huge sigh of relief, right? And Brandy's like happier now. And then they do a time jump after the death happens, right? And it's so funny too. There was a one scene where they're cremating the body of the mom, and you just see Brandy looking at the fire, smiling like, oh, I don't have to deal with this nightmare anymore, right? They do a time jump. Brandy's interviewing for a new job. She's pregnant again, this time with twins. So that kind of curse that they had with their original baby is kind of lifted, because now they have their daughter that's growing up. They have a pair of twins on the way. Husband's doing well. They love each other. And it's during the job interview when they're saying like, oh, your story is so fascinating. You're dealing with kind of raising a child or giving birth to kids and dealing with an in-law. Like, how did you deal with all those things and everything? And then they flash back, and they flash during a moment where the mom is in bed screaming out, help me, help me, help me, right? And Brandy shows up to help, but not in the way she wanted to. And Brandy actually smothers the mom. And that's how the mom passes away. Because we come to learn that Brandy sleepwalks. And she has like a lot of these weird dreams and weird visions in her head. And it intensified the moment the mom was there. And somehow, during one of these sequences, and Brandy is aware of this because she's recalling it as she's being interviewed, but as if it's like awoken in her. Oh, I did that. And I was the one that kind of put the end to the mom. And she's like, honestly, I did what I dealt with it. I have no regrets. And they have the song No Regrets playing in the background. And as she was driving to the interview, she's singing along to the song in the car, no regrets. Because at the end of the day, she has no regrets for how things turned out for her. And that was the interesting twist at the end of this movie, is that she was the one who ended up doing the bad deed and putting the end of the mother-in-law. And I thought it was kind of like a quirky, kind of brilliant way to end a movie like this. And yeah, like I said, it's definitely a different type of movie. I appreciate it for that. And even though it doesn't rank really high up there, it still was a decent watch. I'm glad I was able to watch this. And like I said, I'm very much looking forward to what other things we can see from Max and Sam Or like I said, get them working together with their own brother Robert and see what they can do, because it'll be great to see a major collaboration between the Eggers there in the future. So yeah, so that is The Front Room. So is that a movie that I can recommend to people? Maybe. Yeah, I'll definitely give my thoughts. I would say if you're looking for something different, check it out. If you ever have experienced living with in-laws, then that is a movie that maybe you may want to check out or may not if you still currently live with them. Because there's always that typical nightmarish situation of living with in-laws, and this definitely heavily plays on that. It's like the tormenture and the nightmare situations that people do not look forward to with the possibility of living with an in-law or having an in-law move in with them. So yeah, it definitely plays on a lot of those different types of tropes. And just seeing Brandy tortured throughout the whole film was just very interesting and cute to watch. Cute is maybe the wrong word, but it was just really interesting to see her have to deal with it all. So yeah, all right. So that's The Front Room. Last movie for today. And I know I'm going really long here. What's going on, MR? Nice of you to tune in. I hope you're doing well. My in-laws once fed me dog food by accident. Oh my God. Yeah, I'm sure it was by accident. I have an interesting story about dog food too. So my dad immigrated from Chile, and he eventually met my mom in New York. But when they moved to the States, him and his two other brothers, I believe, they didn't speak any lick of English, right? And they were learning how to live, learning how to shop for food and all that, and they were getting by. And the more and more they got friends, they would have dinner parties and all those things like that. One instant when they had friends over, they were preparing them food, and the friends saw just a lot of cans of dog food in the cupboard, and they're like, "Oh, where's your dog?" And they said, "We don't have a dog." And they're like, "So why do you have all these cans of dog food?" Comes to find out that they didn't know they were eating dog food this whole time. They just thought it was like meat in cans that they were eating. So it's a sad story. I can kind of laugh at it now, and all that. But that's also one of the reasons why, growing up, he refused to teach me Spanish and French, which he spoke. My mom can speak Spanish, French, Portuguese, Chinese, and Filipino. But they refused to teach me any language because he didn't want me to get confused growing up, and he didn't want me to come across any situation like he experienced when he moved to the States for the first time. So yeah, so that is my dog food story. It's kind of like a bummer, but MR, if that's true that your in-laws once tried to feed you dog food, I'm so sorry to hear that. And maybe this is a movie you should watch because it's definitely an interesting one about that. All right. The last movie I'm going to be talking about today is not a horror thriller or psychological type of movie. It is, well, maybe it is, depending on what you think of Kevin Smith. But it is the movie, the 4:30 movie, which I found to be a very interesting movie. I dubbed this as Kevin Smith's John Hughes movie. If you ever seen Kevin Smith do a talk or a speech, he doesn't do it so much anymore these days, but he used to tour conventions and he used to tour like the country, giving just conversations, talking about his life in Hollywood, talking about his inspirations, his encounters with people in the industry. And I've had the chance to sit down on some of these conversations. And the one thing he talks about a lot is his love for the 80s and his love for John Hughes films and all that. This is definitely his moment to create a John Hughes-like film. It's a movie that takes place in the 80s. It features teenagers, very much like those movies back in the day. But this is, once again, another very personal film of his. When Clerks 3 came out, I was initially, when I first saw it, I thought it was a terrible movie. Because it was a movie that really was more about Kevin Smith than the actual characters of the film. Because you could tell that he used his own life and was like a reflection of his own life within that film. With The heart attack happening in the beginning, very much like Kevin Smith. Him going back to his roots of when he made the first Clerks movie and then them doing the movie in this movie. Just like all of those things happening. But when I watched it again recently, I learned to appreciate it more so, now understanding where Kevin's life has gone from then. Kevin had a heart attack. He had a bad addiction to marijuana that he kind of got away from. He lost his psyche. He admitted himself to a psychiatric ward for a while to kind of get himself back in tune with himself. So seeing his life trajectory in the last, 5 years was a very interesting thing. So watching Clerks 3 again recently made me appreciate it a little bit more so, now understanding what Kevin Smith has really been going through. But even if you watch something like the last Jay and Silent Bob movie that talked about aging and growing up and getting older, a lot of his films, especially when we explore some of his reoccurring characters, are really more insights about how he's feeling about his own life. And the 4:30 movie, which is a movie that I wasn't expecting it to turn out to be that way, really ended up being another reflection of Kevin Smith's own life, which is really interesting to see. Star-Lord, what's going on, Star-Lord? Star-Lord's in the house. How you doing, man? Nice to see you here. I hope you had a great week. I hope you're having a good day. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for timing in. I know you've been looking forward to the 4:30 movie, so I am just about to talk about my thoughts on this movie. So, yeah, I'll say what I liked about this is the setting. It definitely feels like an 80s John Hughes-like movie. The characters are charming in their own ways, and he loves this actor, Austin Zahur. He's used him for a lot of his projects. The only thing that kind of took me out of it was the likability of this guy. Yes, he is charming, and he is like me and like many of you. He's a lover of movies. And the one thing that I really appreciate about this is that it takes place mostly in a movie theater, as he, was able to ask the girl of his dreams out on a date, meet me for the 4:30 showing, and they were going to go there early because they like to hop between movies, right, in the local theater. And we get to see him interact with his best buds, and it's very much that same humor and chemistry that we come to grew up and love from the 80s. A lot of sexual innuendos, a lot of back and forth, very much like how I was when I grew up with my friends. We would joke with each other a lot in those ways. This movie had a lot of that in it. It had a very relatable feel to it because of the setting and the very communal experience of going to the movies in a small neighborhood. The theater that I grew up mostly with, which is no longer there anymore, I remember that theater fondly. I've told stories about that theater, watching Batman 89 for the first time, only because my friends were in the front of the line and they called me over so I could watch it with them. Seeing Back to the Future 2 and 3 at those theaters I grew up with, so it really made me feel like this was like an homage to that type of feeling, and to people like me, lovers of film, lovers of movie theaters, and that experience of watching movies, right? And the whole 80s vibe altogether. And this movie had a lot of that going on. What I didn't like, or what I wasn't expecting, was halfway through the movie, it all of a sudden it clicks with you. Oh my God, he is once again telling a personal story about his own experiences. Because there's a line in this movie where he's having a conversation with one of the workers at the movie theater, who he just learned is a big movie buff like he is. And they're having back and forth about their directors that they like and the movies that they like, and how she's eventually going to move to Rhode Island to attend a creative school because she wants to become a director. And he's like, oh, that's awesome for you to, to be able to live your dream like that. I've never known anyone like that. And she's like, of course you have. You see that person in the mirror every day. He's like, what? He's like, there are people like you and like us that we love movies for a reason, and eventually we are going to turn around and turn our own stories and make our own stories and tell our own stories. And I'm just like, this is Kevin Smith. I guarantee you, this is an excerpt from his own life growing up, and it makes sense because if you don't know the story, there was this local theater in New Jersey that was shutting down. It happened to be his local neighborhood theater. So what did he do? He bought it. He saved it from closing down, and now he runs it, probably at a loss. I hear he's bleeding money. He's bleeding money from this theater, this venture of his. But it allows him to hold premieres of his films and do festivals and all those things, and maybe rent it out to other people. But he saved his neighborhood theater from leaving for good. And it takes place, again, this story takes place in this one theater, during the 4:30 showing, or at least the anticipation for it. Eventually got pushed into 7 o'clock, and eventually they weren't able to see the movie, but they were able to spend time together, And I was just like, wow, here we go again with another retrospective on, I guess, a moment in time for him. And I wasn't expecting that. And I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. But overall, I thought the movie was somewhat entertaining. No, let me rephrase that. Not somewhat. It was entertaining. It was cute in many ways. It was charming in a lot of ways. He does the typical dialogue-heavy moments, especially emotional moments of dialogue, that some of them worked and some of them didn't. And I felt the parts that lost me the most was when he was focusing so much on the romance between the two young actors, the characters of Brian and Melody, right? They're the ones that are supposed to see the 4:30 showing together. At the end of the movie, there's this long dialogue between them two that I felt lasted too long, in my opinion. I was already starting to lose interest after a while. And it just happens to, that conversation happens to lead towards basically the end of the movie. Because as they were like walking off, all happily, now being boyfriend and girlfriend, they say, oh, we could tell our own story like this one day. Oh, you think our story could make a good movie? Yeah, I could picture it now as we're walking here. The credits will roll. And what happens? Credits roll. There you go. So it was very tongue-in-cheek, very quirky, very like meta in a way. And again, it's one of those movies where I don't know how I feel about that. There are a lot of parts of the movie that I did appreciate, that I thought was funny. Ken Jeong is hilarious in this, by the way, as the manager of the theater. There's one actor, Nicholas Cirillo, who plays Bernie, like the older friend of the group. He is freaking hilarious. His line delivery, he reminds me of people I grew up with back in the day. And he reminds me, if you're a Howard Stern fan, he reminds me of Ralph. The character of Ralph. Rest in peace, by the way. Ralph passed away. But he reminds me so much of Ralph. It's crazy. It's so crazy. He's like a young Ralph. If I could imagine Ralph being like this as a kid. But it's nuts. The similarities there. He's really, really great in this. Some awkward casting choices like Method Man with a weird role and all that. But it doesn't take away too much from the movie. But yeah, it was a very, very interesting movie overall. And it does tie into the View Askew verse. And again, I'm about to go into spoilers, but before I do, I would rate this movie 3 out of 5 stars. Definitely not one of his best, but I would say it is one of his better movies in recent years. I actually like this better than Clerks 3, my opinion. At first watch. I don't know how I will feel about this movie when I watch it again, but at first watch, I like this movie better than I did when I watched Clerks 3 for the first time. So, but there are parts of it I had problems with. There really were. But it had your very typical 80s movies type of tropes, which is something, again, he's very good at. I mean, he grew up during that time. You know, we all did, and so we could pinpoint them and call them out. You know, um, but the way, and again, spoiler alert for anyone here, there is a credit scene, an after credit scene, post credit scene, and it's a nice little joke because throughout the whole movie, the one thing that I found annoying after a while, it was cute at first, but they did a lot of these things, is that they would make a lot of references for the time period, but they would project how we would react to those same references in present time, in the future. For example, there's a conversation between this wrestler. They idolize this wrestler called Major Murder, who happens to be in town for a show that they're going to do. And Bernie, the older friend, comes across him. They have a nice little conversation, and they say, "Oh man, you know what? I love that Bill Cosby, man. Bill Cosby is an American treasure." So obviously that didn't work out, right? But there was a lot of these like little references that they would do, and like I said, in the beginning it was cute. Then after a while, it's just like, oh yeah, here we go. This is just another like little poke at, oh, we thought this back then. Look where they are now, right? So, or look where this situation is. He played about Hands Across America, as this was the day it happened, and they were like holding hands right across the street from the theater. And the older guy, he's trying to cross the street. It's like, you guys are adults. Stop touching each other. You know, it's just really funny shit. And yeah, it is just a lot of plays like that. But the post-credit scene, oh, and another reference is, as they're watching the movies and the credits are rolling, the guys are like, why are we still here? Like, why don't we leave? You know, it's like, well, you know, watching credits is not something people are going to do with movies. That's just not something, because they reference that there was a scene in one of the old 80s movies when you were watching the credits, not Ferris Bueller, but they mentioned something else. And it's like, who knows? There could be something. It's like, yeah, right. People are really going to be sitting through credits nowadays just to see some sort of scene at the end of it. Haha. And now, of course, the MCU kind of made a thing out of it, right? And all the movies try to do that now. And this movie did it too. So if you wait and you're patient to sit through the credits, and thank God Kevin Smith didn't have a monologue during the credits like Clerks 3, which was another thing that I hated about that movie. It's like, why are you now showing up during the credits of your movie telling us about the movie you just made when we just watched the movie you just made? And you're just recapping the storyline of the same damn movie. It's like, you must have been really high during this time, right? But they kind of, as the credits finish, you see, like, since you waited through all this, we see the kids, you know, the relationship between Brian and Melody are still going strong, and they're all friends. The boys are there with them, and they're asking this guy, is like, hey, have you done it yet? No, he hasn't done it yet. He hasn't built up the courage to dive in there. And it's a lot of sexual innuendos, right? So it was there full on back and forth. And then he's like, okay, I think I'm ready. I'm ready to get in there. They show what's across the street, and it's the quick stop. So basically it was him debating whether or not he should apply for a job at the quick stop. And so that's how everything ties in. Once again, it feels like a very personal situation with Kevin Smith. We all know Kevin Smith worked at that same quick stop that he eventually made a movie out of in Clerks. And that basically is the pinnacle of what created his movie career and his rise, fall, and resurgence in stardom, I guess, in a way, or relevance. I don't know. Depending on how you look at it and depending on where in the Kevin Smith pendulum you fall under. But I was just like, womp womp, you know. I was like, all right, well, there you go. And that's a nice way to kind of tie things into this whole universe and all that. Another thing I did appreciate that he did was that during the movies, he loved showing fake trailers. And a lot of these trailers were very like kind of homages to like the campy grindhouse '80s horror trailers that we got back in the day. But Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez already did that, so it wasn't anything too special. But of course, in these trailers, he featured his daughter, who was in one of them. Jason Mewes was in one of it was in the same trailer. So I felt like it was an excuse to kind of bring back some of his buddies to show up in this film. Another interesting thing is that Kevin Smith not only wrote and directed this movie, he did the editing of this movie. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. I also noticed that Scott Mosier was nowhere connected to this movie at all. So I don't know if they had a falling out or what have you, but that also something interesting there. So yeah, so like I said, there are moments of charm. I laughed quite a bit in this movie, but there were movies and moments that stood out. I was just like, I don't know about that. This is taking too long. Oh, this is dragging out. Oh, I see what you're doing here. Oh, this is all about you, isn't it? And then we got that last scene at the very, very end. So yeah. So that is my overall thoughts on the 4:30 movie. Do I recommend it? Yeah, if you're a big Kevin Smith fan, I think you'll get it. You'll dig this. I think if you're a huge fan of '80s and '80s culture and the movies of the '80s, I think a lot of this will remind you of those moments. A lot of the guys that were laughing in the theater with me, they were my age. I heard them talk later on. It's like, I'm 43 and I love this stuff. It reminds me of the '80s and all that. And let me tell you, they're 43, but they look like they're 50. So I guess thank God I don't look that old. But yeah, that is Kevin Smith's 4:30 movie. So there you go. 3 movies. Big mega movie review episode. So I hope you appreciate it. All right. Let me get back to the chat here. Starlord, I know I have missed some of your stuff here. So Kevin Smith is cool. Sometimes gives us kids words of wisdom. I think I quit smoking weed around the same time he has. Oh, I didn't know you used to smoke. I still partake from time to time, but not anything like he did. No more 420. Now it's 4:30. Coffee and aspirin for backaches. For the old folks, I still love Cosby. Just keep him at Ghost Dad as Ghost Dad. I don't want Bill to be physical. Look, to this day, I still say the Cosby Show is a fantastic series. It has a lot of great messages in there, and I have fond memories of watching that show. And I will never say anything bad about that show. It's just unfortunately I see it now in a different light because of everything that we know about Cosby today. However, if I turn, if I go invisible, you're on the fence about what exactly? I'm not sure exactly when you said that comment, depending on what I was talking about at the moment. The thing is, like, when you're around Cosby, just don't drink anything. That's how he gets you. He gets you with the booze or with the Spanish fly.
Yeah! I'm gonna come.
No! Get away from me! No! Oh, God, no! Ah, get out of my head! No! By the way, if you are watching live on the stream, don't forget to hit that like button. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to be live for the next 5 minutes. So anything you want to talk about, let me know and we could chat before I head on out for the day. I don't want to demonize the man. What he did was wrong. That's what he did, not who he was before. I mean, he it seemed to me like he was like that for a long time. I'll just say that. Which is impossible, which is probably impossible to go back to anyways. Yeah, that's true. It's just one of those unfortunate things where, man, we had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. And now that we do know, it's tragic, it's disturbing, and it's unfortunate. Because he was, not to reuse this phrase that is often used a lot, he was America's dad for a long period of time. Fat Albert, his comedy records did really well. He joked about Spanish Fly a lot. So again, makes me feel like he was doing that stuff back then too. I remember the show he used to have where he would draw things. I used to watch that every weekend morning. Cosby Show, all those things. He did a lot of good stuff. Party people are idiots at the time. It brings out the demon in you. I also think it's Hollywood. Hollywood turns you into a whole different type of beast. Not the type of beast like McAvoy in Speak No Evil, but it definitely changes you, I think. And I think that's one of the reasons too why I never wanted to move to LA. And even though I love this business and I love movies and I love the industry, I don't think I could ever fit in or want to fit in on the whole Hollywood scene. I'd rather stay independent, East Coast independent. I guess you could say it's that simple. I'm not gonna get into this conversation with you, Star Lord, because I sometimes we approach this topic in different ways, but you know, it does beg the question: if that movement never happened, would we have found out? Yeah. What's going on, W Mouth? Do I know any good animation software? I have a friend whose son is using that Adobe animation program. I forgot the name of it. I'm not too familiar with the Adobe suite of products, but from what I've seen his son do, it does really interesting and fun stuff. So the only downside is that with Adobe, you have to pay a monthly subscription for their products, which is kind of annoying. But if you've never used anything before, maybe that's something you could start off with. I don't know of any other free programs. Starlord does some video editing, but I don't know, Starlord, if you've ever done any animation. If you have any recommendations for Mouth as far as animation software is concerned. What kind of animation are you looking to get into? I love your takes, even if mine are. At the end of the day, it's conversation, and we can have a conversation very civilly, right? We don't always have to agree on everything. You may have different opinions on things. I have different opinion on things, but at the end of the day, we still share the same passions and same love, and we at least know how to communicate at the end of the day, right? So I take the time out to understand you. You take the time out to understand me, and I think that's how it just should be. I had someone in here earlier, Star-Lord. You would have loved to see this person. This person, Mariana, came in, and her question was, what kind of geek are you? Based or woke? And I'm like, okay, where is she going with this? And she said, and then I gave my little answer on it. Yeah, I said, I don't believe in like the whole categorizations of all these things. You know, I am honest about my opinions. I'll call things out and all that. And then she said, let me put it this way. Did you like The Acolyte, Rings of Power, and She-Hulk? And I gave my honest opinions about those things. And then she followed up with, it doesn't bother you when they don't respect the canon of those universes? I'm not even talking about gender or race swap. And then again, I gave my opinions about all that stuff. And then they just disappeared. So I wonder if they were trying to poke the bear or what they were trying to do. I don't know. But it's interesting that people kind of look at things that way now. You know? It's definitely an interesting time. Mouth currently learning Blender. It's like 3D, but also can make it look like 2D. Are you more interested in making 3D animation or 2D animation? The shows was a big old piece of trash. Yeah, I said, look, there are parts of The Acolyte I like, other parts I didn't. She-Hulk started strong for me, and then it fell apart. Not because of who was on it, or who guest appeared on it, or who was cast for what. It's the writing. And they thought they were being a little bit too smart and cheeky with their stuff, you know? And it just didn't work for me. Rings of Power, I said, I liked how season 1 ended, but I haven't had a chance to even watch season 2 yet. So that's just my opinion. It's not, I don't follow an agenda. I'm not promoting an agenda. I just call things the way I call it based on my opinions. That's it. Now, I'm not going to say your opinion's wrong, her opinion's wrong. I don't agree with that. I've never been one to say any of that. You all know that. So, but I want to talk about it. You know, I love the conversations behind it. I want to know why you don't like something, or I want to know why you really like something. So, and I think you guys give me the same respect. You hear my takes. So. Absolutely. Not everything made will always be good or great. You know, and the one thing I will never do, again, and I've proven this, I think, already, I will never actively shit on anything unless I actually see it myself. You know, I wanted so bad to talk badly about the Rebel Moon movies, but I went, sat down, and I watched those movies first. Was I right? I sure as hell was. But I wasn't going to shit on it until I saw it. And that's how I always carry myself. You know, I see trailers that look terrible, but I'm not going to say anything until I actually see it, if I want to see it. And if I don't, I'll just straight up say, you know what? This movie, I don't want to see it. Like this new movie with Dave Bautista that came out this weekend. Was that The Killer Game or whatever? Doesn't look interesting at all to me. That's why I chose not to watch it at all. I like Dave Bautista. I want him to do more things. I think he should do a lot more drama. I think he would be fantastic in drama roles. But the movie looked very hokey to me. And I'm like, that doesn't look like a movie I want to see. So I gave other movies a shot. So BRB. Uh-oh. Oh, help me, no! They're coming for me. I'm being haunted. And hunted. What's gonna happen? Who's around the corner? No. Ah! 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 I hope everyone's having a good day today. Again, if you're one last reminder, if you're watching live here on the stream, please don't forget, hit that like button. Would greatly appreciate it. All of us will appreciate it. All of us will appreciate you. And I'm going to be live for, I'll wait for Star-Lord to come back, and then I will say my goodbyes. But it was a quieter stream today. I don't know. Look, YouTube hasn't been sending notifications out as well as they used to. On Monday, a lot of people showed up. Today, not a lot of people showed up. I know people are back in school, so that could be playing havoc with schedules and all. It is what it is. You know, again, for those of you who have showed up, I highly, highly appreciate you. Heavily appreciate all of you. Like I said, the next couple of weeks, schedule-wise, is going to be hard. It's going to be tough. It's going to be busy. So I will do my best to maintain content on the channel. I'll try my best to find proper schedules for streaming. But yeah, a lot of stuff coming up in the next month, I guess. Yeah, the next month is going to be tough. Super late in Asian countries, that is also accurate. Also in Europe, it's nighttime. But Mouth, I appreciate you for hanging in there and at least saying hi. What's everyone doing this weekend? I hope you're all having a nice, relaxing weekend ahead of you. I'm going to catch up with a friend of mine tomorrow, and then it's going to be back to business once again on my side. So busy, busy, busy. Mouth, I'm sorry. I don't know if you heard my question. Are you looking to do more 3D animation or 2D animation? Dun. Oh, oh. Let's go. Bum, 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 bum. Mouse says, I want to do 2D animation, but I suck at drawing, so I want to use 3D and make it into 2D by using models. Okay, that's an interesting approach. I will say this. Wait, hold on. You know what? Let me look it up. Hold on one second. Oh, it's a very easy name. So Adobe Animate. Adobe Animate is a 2D animation software. And this is the same program, again, the son of my friend is using. And the son of my friend cannot draw either. But they have tools in this program that really helps with a lot of those things. And if I'm sure if you spend enough time with it, then it's gonna help you produce certain things that you want to make. So, and again, I know it sucks that you have to pay for it. If you you didn't hear this from me, but if you could find a way to download it somehow and use it on your system without having to have to pay for it, then I will say give it a chance, give it a shot, because the stuff that he's done, I've seen it, and it's pretty damn good. It looks really good. So I would say like if you want to try another kind of another kind of piece of software, Mouth, maybe that's something you could try. All right, y'all. I think now is a good time for me to call it a night or call it a day. It's about 6:40, about to hit 7 p.m. and I still got some things I need to do. You'll check it out. Also, when you do, let me know. And Mouth, do you have a channel? Are you promoting any of your animation at all anywhere? If so, let me know. I'll check out some of your stuff for sure. And hopefully other people here will do the same thing. But as I leave for today, I want to say thank you so much again for all of you who tuned in. Big shout outs, obviously, to Star-Lord, Scorched, Gorilla Fantasy. Mariana, I appreciate the questions. I don't know where you went to. And I don't know what your intentions were, but I hope you come back. I hope we could have future conversations. Kevin Davis, Caleb, and 187, who was new to the channel. I hope I get to see them again in the future. Mouth, of course, big thank you to you as well. But I appreciate all of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. I will be back Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, talking about the usual box office weekend and how things turned out and the latest news and all those kinds of things that dropped. We'll talk more about those type of things on Monday. And then we'll see how the rest of the weeks go. Again, busy schedule for the next couple of weeks. So, like I said, I hope all of you have a fantastic weekend. What kind of music should I play here? Since it is Friday the 13th. I hope all of you have a spooky Friday. Oh. And also stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. I will catch all of you guys next time. All right, peace out, everyone. Bye. Good night to you too, Mouth. Have a great weekend.